All right, well, it's almost 4 o'clock, so we're going to be getting started here. I'm going to unmute Steve Eschbach, who is our guest of honor today. For those of you who probably don't know, Steve invited my wife and I out to Chicago in early December. He made arrangements so that there was no snow. And Peggy and I came out a few days early, and I'm originally from the Chicago area. We drove out to my boyhood home, which had been torn down, just the other side of Michigan City, Indiana. And the following day, we had the great pleasure of speaking at the Chicago downtown chapter, which was held in the suburban area. So a great opportunity to meet all the folks in Chicago. I'm going to admit some more people now, and we're going to get started. So Steve and I spent a few minutes before this meeting, and we started chatting. I'm going to have Steve first do his classic 90-second announcement, so you'll understand a little bit better where he comes from. Steve used to live in Connecticut, and when he was in Connecticut, he invited me, I don't remember what year it was, but quite some time ago, he invited me to speak at Neary in Connecticut. One of my first outside the organization speaking engagements. So now I'm going to give you Steve Eschbach, and he's going to, again, start you with his 90-second announcement, so we'll understand his background. Steve, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks so much for the invite. So some of you on the line, it looks like I'm having a Chicagoland chapter. I see some familiar Chicagoland faces. Thanks for joining me. So I currently own a business called Transworld Business Advisors. We are the largest business brokerage in the United States, perhaps even the world. So what I do now is I assist business owners confidentially sell their businesses to qualified buyers. So I match the buyer and the seller, and we make the transaction happen. It's primarily focused on what I would call mom and pops up to what I would also call middle market. And I know that many of you know that I am not a stickler for defining that. Mom and pops, of course, are your local dry cleaners, small restaurants, things of that sort. And then the small to mid-sized market, maybe any business 50 million and below. That's kind of what I do. My corporate background was in investor relations with a number of publicly traded companies. I did my job so well that I got a premium to the current shareholders' value, up to 20%. But in the acquisition process, I unfortunately became the executive that was duplicate. So I was shown the door. So I've been restructured out of his executive role 6 times since 1999. Joined the FANG in Connecticut in 2006 and have been a member since. And I co-chair the downtown Chicago chapter with Jerry Scherer, who's online here. And then I partner with Steve Blondell, who's also online here in the Rosemont chapter. And we put together periodic meetings here. It's a delight to meet so many different people and learn about their backgrounds and share my experiences and learn from them. So that's about it, Matt.
It's a good start. So tell us a little bit about your decision to form all these companies. What was that all about?
So
you find a regular job?
Well, the first time I did that was actually when I was in Connecticut in 2006. I was transitioned out of a role back then, and it just so happened that someone was looking for investor relations consulting help. And at that time, I might have had Steve Eschbach at AOL.com. So number one, you couldn't put more than 8 letters in the thing before the @ and I was using AOL.com. So it didn't look as professional. I remember one of your newsletters back then, Matt, was talking about if you're going to be an independent consultant, get a presence. So for a mere like $99, I was able to go to GoDaddy or whatever the popular places was out there. So I formed Eschbach and Associates LLC. A good friend of mine in Connecticut had all the paperwork I needed to file the documentation to become a business in Connecticut. And again, for a mere $60, I think I was an LLC. So I had a presence. So instead of being Steve Eschbach at AOL.com, I became SP Eschbach at Eschbach and Associates.com, and there was my presence. And it goes to show you, Matt, that it's really not what you know, but who you know. So if I didn't ask the question, does anyone know how to set up an LLC? or if I didn't read your newsletter, I would
Sure.
not maybe have a web presence, nor would I have had the documents to file with the state of Connecticut to become a business. So that's how it all came to be.
Sure. I think, I was in the advertising business, and the whole goal is to look bigger than you actually are. There's
Absolutely.
a spotlight in front of you, projected on the big wall behind you.
Yes.
Uh, I, I, I think, I go to the, when they had them, I had go to meetings for the Association for Corporate Growth, and I meet a lot of people whose background is mergers and acquisitions, investment banking, and so forth. And you get into these entertaining conversations with them, and you get to the point where you're exchanging business cards, and you look down and it says Jack Smith at gmail.com. I say, boy, he's really in business.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it doesn't cost as much. I think people don't realize how inexpensive it can be to form your own company. And an LLC is all you really need to get started. I'm not a multi-billion-dollar company yet, so I don't need all the intricacies of that.
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Coming to a theater in your neighborhood, I'm sure.
There you go.
So you started this, you took office space. What are you doing with your office space? I know we talked, we had our meeting in your office space.
We did, and unfortunately, it was still under construction at the time. You must still have some Chicagoland dust in your home in Connecticut. I apologize.
We do.
Yeah, I apologize.
Tracked up the whole house.
So here's an interesting concept about the office space. So when I first started my business here in Illinois, I actually became a Regus office, shared office suite holder. And I found out that here in Naperville that I was suite 200 of a particular address in downtown Naperville. Well, there was 150 to maybe 200 similar type companies sharing suite number 200. And then I met an individual who was a lawyer, he actually owns the building that you and Peggy were at. And he said, Steve, you can't be a Regus virtual office holder because you won't be found on Google. So what he did is he came up with a concept called the Business Lounge Network, which was a series of smaller type Regus firms. But what you could do is you could have suites up to A through H. And as you can see in my business address, I'm suite 3H of 1515 Legacy Circle. The reason why we do that is he had taught me, and he's a lawyer by profession, but he's a digital marketing fanatic. And he had taught me that if you have a presence like that, you'll be found on Google. And I can't tell you how many businesses have found me through a Google search because I am suite 3H of 1515 Legacy Circle in Naperville. If you are a virtual office holder with a Regus or a WeWork or one of those type of places, you're not going to be found on the internet. And I have found that being found on the internet is critical for you to get some referrals. And in the 4 years I've been doing that, I still get calls from people saying, well, I found you on a Google internet search.
Cool.
So,
Yeah. So if you could share with everybody your thinking on starting your own business. Clearly you were at a crossroads. You were working for, what was the name of the firm? Integris?
I was working with a company called Integris. Yeah. So Integris was the parent holding company for a downtown Chicago gas company called People's Gas, but they own 4 or 5 other utilities in the upper Midwest.
Okay.
So like I was telling you before, in my role as investor relations, I was able to get a premium of 20% to our then current stock price. Turned Integris from a $4 billion company into a $5 billion company, and were acquired by Wisconsin Energy. So in my investor relations capacity, I turned out to be the duplicate executive, and I was, of course, shown the door. So now I was back to trying to find what I thought would have been my 7th corporate role. This happened 5 other times prior to Integris.
Sure. You moved to Chicago for this job, correct?
I did move to Chicago for this job. There's a story behind that, but I don't know if we'll have time to get into that. That was done by networking, and you never know. But what happened here is that when I had done the traditional networking, and I actually registered with Monster.com and Career Builder, I got approached by the United Franchise Group asking me if I would want to start my own business. I said, I've done that already. And they said, well, how would you like to buy a sign shop where you would get bricks and mortar and you make signs? And I said, you know what? I'm not really interested in that. So the United Franchise Group representative had the foresight to say, well, Steve, what do you like to do? And I said, let me tell you what I've done before. I was an investor relations executive, and I trained C-level executives to be clear, concise, confident, and convincing.
Ah,
in their community. You remember reading something about that, Matt?
yeah. Well, this was actually the real question, which was what skills from your earlier work history have enabled you to do what you're doing now?
So that's exactly it. I was coaching C-level executives of these billion-dollar companies to be clear, concise, confident, and convincing in their communications with Wall Street, which of course garnered the premium to stocks. So after I was let go at Integris because of the acquisition, I started looking for another corporate executive role in investor relations. The comment I got back more often than not was, Steve, you're not junior enough. And when I met with the United Franchise Group and they had this business called Transworld Business Advisors, I say, well, what do? Well, they help business owners confidentially sell their businesses to buyers. And I said to myself, that's almost the same thing as investor relations, just in a smaller scale. And the
Excellent.
investment was not as good, not as robust as it would have been for a side job, because not only would you have to buy the franchise fee, and by the way, Dan Citronbaum,
Yes.
huge input on my decision to buy a franchise, because at my age, starting a new business, I thought having something already there made some sense, and it did. But in any event, Transworld, I'm basically doing the same thing. I'm working with business owners to be clear, concise, confident, and convincing about the investment merits of the business they want to sell to a new buyer. Same type of thing, just a different scale. And all the same things. You got to go through an asset purchase agreement. You have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. All the things I did in corporate America were also being done there. So now, many more smaller businesses doing what I did in the corporate world many years prior.
So during this short period of time, hopefully, that we'll be dealing with a COVID-19 crisis. I was very interested in one of our previous conversations on how you're adapting your business.
This is amazing, and it's going to sound counterintuitive, but I think this pandemic has been a blessing in disguise. And the reason why I say that is that I literally got a brand new listing a week ago Sunday. I did all of the financial analytical work on an Excel spreadsheet, sharing my screen in Zoom. And the owners were impressed about how easily, if I change the number here, the valuation would be this. Oh, we got to add that back? Okay, now your valuation's gone up a little bit. And she and her husband saw live and in Zoom cert. And when I say live and in Zoom cert, that's live and in concert using Zoom. Live and in Zoom cert, she was able to see the valuation in a nanosecond. And the next day, I actually physically had to go pick up the check, because you can't yet deliver checks through Zoom, but that may happen down the road. But believe it or not, what I'm going to do from this point forward is the first initial meeting between a buyer and a seller is probably going to be via Zoom, because I want to make sure I have a serious buyer with a serious seller before I bring them together. You can't do it anyway because of, this, by the way, is my new shopping outfit.
Okay.
And that's what I would use.
Be careful.
That was made by my wife, by the way. And she may go into business on her own. You never know. But the point of the story is that you can do a lot of these interactions, which are almost the same thing as being there. I think I've heard that before. But in any event, doing it via Zoom, and look at, I can see your background. You can see my background. So let's say I had a retail store that was for sale. I literally could take my cell phone, do a Zoom call, walk around the premises, and if they like what they see via video, and if your quality of your camera is good, you'll get a good impression of what it is your clients are. Then you have the physical meeting and you get into the due diligence after the letter of intent.
Yeah. Back in 1996, when I took over the networking group, there was this interesting developing technology called email. So now this Zoom is an enabling technology.
It definitely is. And
my wife and I have been diligent observers of Seth Meyer, Stephen Colbert, and John Oliver, who are broadcasting from their homes. And the light went on and I said, I could have my own TV station.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're doing with Chat with Matt. We're going to see whether this is a way of connecting all of our members in a way that would not be possible prior to Zoom. Although
Absolutely.
Zoom has existed, we weren't using it and people weren't comfortable with it.
It's amazing.
One of our objectives with these chats with Matt is to get everybody very comfortable with Zooming. because it's the new wave for interviewing.
Absolutely.
I think the telephone interview is dead. Why
I do.
bother? When you can Zoom and actually see people in their native environment and to watch their expressions, and then it might be worthwhile to have an in-person meeting.
So I crack a smile, Matt, because I continuously meet new people all the time, new buyers, new prospective sellers.
Yep.
And when we have an initial phone conversation, how'd you like to set up a time to have a more expansive phone conversation? I said, I don't do phone conversations anymore. I will set up a Zoom and we can do it via Zoom. And that's
Yep.
what we've done. I think it's a better way to do it. I think it's the same price. Zero. Well, I have a paid subscription, so does Fang, but
Mhm.
you know, my wife does it. She's a teacher and she's connecting with her school. She's doing these video conferences with children, and you could do it with a free account. Now, when you get to be bigger and larger in terms of the entity that you do, a paid account makes sense, but it's the way to go. It's very, very effective.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my grandson over the weekend, and I was telling him that I hope he was amazed with all of these things that are going on. He's just doing it all the time. So now I am still amazed. And I think what you're doing with Zoom, with your clients, is amazing. It would have been, you would email a spreadsheet to someone. Now you have them online.
And
you
not
walk
only
them
this,
through
Matt,
it. And
yeah.
more importantly, I think in relationship building, when you can actually see someone and you can watch their expressions, it's very powerful. Over the years, I've Skyped with people around the world, and it's like they're sitting across from you.
Absolutely. The thing I like most about Zoom is that when you get an Excel spreadsheet together, and you and I are financial types, so some of our spreadsheets can be hundreds of lines long. But then when you want to hone in on a particular cell, all you have to do is point the cursor and tell your client or tell your buyer or tell your seller, this is the line item I want to focus on. Watch what happens when I change this value with this line. And
Yeah.
it's instantaneous. You can't do that with a printed Excel sheet. You can't.
No, you can't. You can't. And you're walking them through changes. It's dynamic as well.
And not only that, you can see the expressions on their face, whether it be
Yes.
amazement, disappointment, or whatnot. It's more real time, and it means a lot more. So it's very, very effective.
You've also decided to license yourself in various ways.
I have. So I am a life
Share
and
that
health.
group.
Sure. So earlier, before I even started Transworld, I was, through my networking, introduced to New York Life. So I became a life and health producer. Now there are some life and health products that would work with business owners. So for example, Keyman Insurance, which is a life insurance policy that business owners should have. If one business owner passes away, the other person has a benefit of some funds there to carry the business forward. Health, of course, you can offer your employees health insurance. I can do that. But the other thing that I did even as recently as a month ago is I became a licensed real estate agent here in Illinois. Now, why would I do that? In Illinois is one of the few states where you can sell a business without having a real estate license. So now if I have a business with a building, I can sell both. But here's another important reason why I became a licensed real estate agent. If I was to do a transaction interstate, which means that if I found a business for someone in Wisconsin, and this actually happened to me, the gentleman on the Wisconsin side said, Steve, show me your Illinois license for real estate. I said, I don't have one. He said, in Wisconsin, I cannot co-broke that with you. If you had an Illinois license, real estate license, then I could co-broke the deal with you. If you are not licensed in the state that you are residing in, the best I can do is offer you a finder's fee.
Okay.
So, and that was another reason to do that. And Transworld is based in Florida. There's many, many Transworld agents in Florida. Any referrals there would be the same thing. Oh, Steve, you're not a licensed real estate agent? Yeah, I know you don't need to have a real estate license in Illinois to be a business broker, but to co-broke across state lines, you do. So now that's...
So basically, you've come up with two licenses that are useful, another product for you to sell to the people that you're meeting, whether or not you actually sell their businesses.
Correct, yeah.
Well, that's a very smart thing to do.
So here's another thing, Matt, and I don't know if this group will find this amazing. I found it amazing. So one of my business listings, the owner actually needs to fill a position. And I said, you know what, if you give me the job spec, I belong to 4 or 5 different networking groups here in the Chicagoland suburb. You give me the job spec, I will post it for you, no charge. And she had a spec for me yesterday, and I sent it out this morning. And that, it's a passion I have to help people in transition to
Oh, yeah.
find.
I do a
So
little bit of that, you know.
so maybe I'm a go-to guy. You know, I'm your person to go to. Like, for example, if a business owner came up to me and said, Steve, I really want to sell, but I don't think I'm ready to sell. And I said, well, what do you need? Well, I see the person might say, you know, Steve, I need someone who can come in and do some forensic accounting work. Really go through the financials and find out what it is I need to do to improve my business. I got a contact for you. I got someone who does that. Now, I could do that, but that would take away from my business brokerage side of what I do. But there's other people I know. Oh, you need legal representation? I know a lawyer. Oh, you need an accounting person to help you review the financials of the business you want to buy? I got an accountant for you. So I like the ability to be able, just through my networking, I know so many people. And having you, remember you mentioned, you said that I invited you to speak at an investor relations group.
That's
I thought
right.
your insights with networking would have helped that investor relations group too.
Sure. Why don't you talk about your book a little bit? What prompted you to write your book?
So this is interesting. The book is called Link, Learn, Leverage, Why Networking is Your Greatest Asset. And I have found over the years that it really, there's some stories in the book, but it's not what you know, but who you know. You can't do everything yourself, and you can't be a subject matter expert on everything. And I have found that asking for help is the best way to go, and being able to help others is the best way to go. So I wrote that book 3 years ago. And basically the entire book was written for an executive in job search. And then I did a pause because now I'm a business broker, and now I'm helping business owners confidentially sell and matching them with qualified buyers. So I took that manuscript that I wrote 2 years ago, adjusted it somewhat, and I kind of have it go how networking helps not only you in job search, but how networking assists you in business development. There's a few of us here in Chicagoland that do not use the word unemployed, and we do not use the term job search networking. Everything we do is business development. And if you stop and think about the most liberal definition of business development, if you are looking for your next career position, that's a business development activity for you. And that's why I did the book there. By the way, you know that you're mentioned in the book, and my favorite thing to ask people is,
I have my own autographed copy, you know.
so my favorite thing to ask people is, what's the definition of a job? And I love your definition. It's in the book. It's something to do between searches, and that's reality.
Yeah. And the funny part of that is that it's always been that way. We just didn't know. The country went through such a long period of after World War II, where we were the only place standing, that there were people with very long careers at one company. Doesn't happen anymore. I still get some kickback from my clients.
Do you really?
Because people have changed jobs a lot. I had a gentleman, a member of our group, who I'm submitting on a private equity CFO controller search right now, and he's had 2 recent jobs within a span of 4 years. And I knew there was a story there, and I shared it with our client. And hopefully they'll take the time to see him. He's a good person. This is what happens. My little joke is that after you work for the great corporation, you work for middle market companies, and they fall into 2 broad categories, good ones and bad ones. The good ones get acquired and the CFO gets fired. Bad ones go out of business and the CFO gets fired. That's why you're always looking for work. Get over it. The CFO is looking for work.
So Matt,
we have a little over 5 minutes. I don't know whether let's see whether we've covered everything, but if those of you who are listening in have questions for Steve, this is a good time to ask him. Otherwise, I'm going to ask him another question. And just unmute your mic.
So Steve, you worked with Dave Waltz?
I did. Yes, I did.
Treasurer, great guy.
He is a great guy.
Yeah, I helped him out leaving Integris right about the time Wisconsin Energy acquired the firm. He'd been there a long time.
Yeah, he had been. So I have a story to tell you about Dave Waltz, okay? Now that you mentioned his name, I have met with him recently in his post-Integris day. He works at a wind power firm, I believe. So he's still in the energy space. And what we didn't talk about is I do some investor relations consulting on the side as well, which I hope will lead into Transworld Business Advisor business down the road. But since he still works at an energy company, I need to reconnect with him to find out, A, how he's doing, anything I can do to help him. And maybe he has introductions for me in the energy side because I still do a lot of consulting work there as well. So thanks for mentioning that. And that's something I always try to do when a name gets mentioned. I'm going to say, you know what, maybe I need to reach out to him again, A, to see if I can help him, and B, see if he's got new names for me.
I like that I was looking through some of the notes that we've put together for this conversation. And one of the core values that I've always followed is the same one you follow. And that is everybody who calls you, you try to help them.
Absolutely.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. I don't know what your reasons are. We can chat about that. Mine is, if I get people call me, I always know somebody I can help. I can introduce them to help them. And then I've helped 2 people.
Absolutely.
And the behavior is you're getting them to call you first because they know you'll have an answer. So you don't want to break that habit.
So I have to tell you a story, Matt. This past week, in the past 7 days, I got 2 calls from 2 people who reached out to me and had other business opportunities for me to participate in. And I said, well, why would you call Steve Eschbach? They said, you know what? Your network is unbelievable. And you know people that I think we can reach out to and help each other going forward. So, and I've been doing networking since 1999 when I first got transitioned out of my first job. And I found out back then, networking is powerful. And to this day, we're talking 2 decades later, I always try to see if I can help someone out. And it puts a smile on my face when I can do that.
It always puts a smile on your face.
Absolutely.
I think I made this up. I think I made it up. I don't know where it came from if I didn't make it up, but it's the more you help other people, the more you help yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's part and parcel of what our networking group is all about, is helping each other.
Absolutely. And Steve Blondell, who's the co-chair of the Suburban chapter, we had a conversation about that within the past week or so. And it's our ultimate goal, just to make sure we're there as a resource to help each other out. It's a delight to work with him. And Jerry Schur is there as well. He's a co-chair of the Chicago downtown chapter. We always try to do whatever we can to help each other out and help anyone that we need.
That's the key. We didn't cover the 3 beach balls. I assume that's related to your investor relations philosophy.
It is, yeah. So the 3 beach balls has to do with the fact that you've got to boil down your elevator pitch into 3 key takeaways. And I advise people that when they come up with their 90-second announcement to start with the 3 key takeaways. Now stop and think about this. When I was in investor relations, I dealt with Wall Street analysts that had to follow 200 or 300 companies for purposes of selecting 30 into a portfolio.
Yeah.
If you're following 200 companies, I literally was told, Steve, you've got more than 3 beach balls. They didn't say that. That's my term. They said,
Yep.
You've got more than 3 key takeaways. Why would I want to follow your company if I've got to remember 5 bullet points about your company? There's a company up north in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, called Wisconsin Energy. They only have 3 key takeaways. They pay a dividend like you do. They're a utility like you. Why would I want to try to remember 5 bullets about your company when there's another company that does the same thing? So again, you're following 200 companies, 3 bullets for each company. That's 600 bullets you've got to remember. I mean, Procter & Gamble does very, very well, but how many bullet points do you think that they have in their investor relations story? It becomes a little bit more difficult to keep that under grasp. And again, in networking, you know, if you can't boil down your key big wow, why you are the better candidate versus anyone else into 3 key bullets, then it's going to be tough for someone to remember who you are. Now, the whole purpose of those 3 beach balls is that it will garner further interest to ask you to tell you a little bit more about themselves. But if you can't summarize who it is you are in 3 key bullets, they may not remember you, and they won't be coming back at you.
Steve,
Debbie Fay, who will be speaking on Chat with Matt later this week, she refers to it as the magic rule of 3s.
Absolutely.
Steve, have
Rainbow
you,
Curly,
have
Holy
you,
Trinity. Why 3? Because 3 is all anybody can remember.
That's correct.
Steve, have you gained the expertise to be able to juggle those 3 beach balls?
No, I don't have to. I can continually hold them. So not to worry. But again, you got to keep it simple. And you know what the S, keep it simple, stupid, because so this was so funny. Early in my career, I was in public utility regulation. And one of the commissioners of the Utility Control Authority said, Steve, I want you to come in. I want to talk to you about this one particular financial point. So I come in with my 3-inch binder, right? 3 inches of all this data. The commissioner says, Steve, you get out of here and you come back. When you boil it down to a single page that you can give to me that summarizes what that 3-inch binder has in it, then I'll talk to you. Otherwise, don't even talk to me. And that's kind of where I learned it. That was back in the 1980s. And I'll tell you, to this day, the executive summary is the most important part of any summary analysis because, yeah, if that's interesting enough for me to want to follow suit, I know I can go to tab C or tab Z. But all I want to know is the key takeaways, and it's in that executive summary. And that's the most powerful document that I've learned to use in my business career, whether it's selling a business, being in corporate executive roles or whatever, because otherwise you'll be lost without it.
Well, one of my favorite people has raised her hand. Peggy, you want to jump in here?
Sure. I just would like to add, Steve, thank you for all your insight. The other reason that we have to go to 3 is what happens is you said, well, I can hold them. You can, because your brain will actually drop not only the next one, but what happens is your brain will actually drop all 3 of them and you won't remember anything. So it's really what happens to your brain. You hold 1, you hold 2, you hold 3. If I give you 4, you hold 0. So we don't want people to forget anything you said. So stop at 3.
So when I do my public speaking, I actually bring beach balls and we demonstrate that. Jerry, you might have been on the receiving end, but I physically throw 3 beach balls. Jerry catches all 3. I throw him the 4th one and he drops the ball. And to your point, Peggy, and you're the communications expert. So having validation from you makes me feel pretty good. So that is an excellent point.
Thank you.
We just have a couple more minutes. How about polite persistence? Let's talk about that. I usually call it dogged persistence, but I like polite persistence. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, light?
Oh, polite persistence.
Oh, polite.
I call it the glass bell. This is how I collected money from Donald Trump.
Well, you basically have to, so there's a chart in my book and it has to do with sales statistics, okay? And it tells you that 80% of the sales are done on the 5th to 12th contact. And Matt, you and I both know that many people ask you, well, you know, I applied for this job, I interviewed, I haven't heard back. So you have to just every so often make that follow-up phone call to say, you know what, I'm still interested in this. I know you've got other candidates there, or I know you're dealing with other business brokers or whatnot, but I just want to get a sense if there's anything else I can provide for you. So you do have to be polite in that term, but you got to keep it up. And believe it or not, if you're calling on the 4th or 5th time, you might think, well, I might be viewed as a pain in the you know what. But if you're able to do it pleasantly, like for example,
right.
So for example, if there's an article that comes out that's related to the industry of, let's say, the prospect you're dealing with, whether it be an employer or whether it be a client for selling, oh, this latest development came up. Have you read about this particular point or whatever? And that's kind of the polite persistence and say, just wanted to make sure that you had all the information you need. If there's anything else I can provide you with, by all means, let me know. And that's kind of how you have to do it. I've had stories told to me where people go to Chamber of Commerce events, they take out their business card. Hi, I'm Steve Eschbach, I'm a business broker. When are you gonna sell? Oh, you're not gonna sell? I don't need you anymore. No, people wanna really take a good interest in who it is you are and, you know, just learn more about you and just kind of get to know you better.
It's like they're selling one of their children. They want to do, it doesn't matter that at the end, it's walkaway time, right? It's like selling a car. You no longer own it.
Absolutely.
Whatever they want to do with it, as I said when I sold my last house, if they burn it to the ground, I really don't care. I have nothing invested in it anymore.
And you'd be amazed that people will come back. I'll meet with them 2 years ago. And I would say, I'm just interested in you and getting the best value out of your business. 2 years later, they'll call me up and they say, you don't remember, Steve? We met. And yeah, now's the time I think I want to sell. You gave me some tips on how to improve the performance of my business, operationally, financially. Now I'm ready to go. And yeah, you don't push, you inform, you educate, and then they'll come back at you at the right time.
Yeah. And persistence pays off. I have a philosophy in my search practice where I advise clients, no reluctant brides.
Yeah.
They're not really excited about this job and they don't, well, fine, if you really bribe me, terrific. No, if they really want the job, they're going to work out better.
So one of my
Right,
colleagues,
we're at the end of our 30 minutes. I try to keep these sessions to 30 minutes so people will stay tuned in. Tomorrow night, Peggy and I are going to be hosting an open mic, and you can ask any questions you want. Love to have you join us and ask questions. That's what we're here for. We live to serve, and we're hoping to make it possible, even during these very unusual times, for all of you to find work. Hopefully you're building up your Zoom skills, and I don't know when the light at the end of the tunnel is going to show up, but we'll all be prepared when it does. So, Steve, it was a terrific conversation with you.
thank you so much, man.
Thank you for agreeing to talk to us.
And thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, so I'm going to end the session now. I want to thank all of you for joining us, and I hope you'll tell all of your friends and neighbors about Chat with Matt. Thank you.